Good morning. This is Mark Hendrick. I'm with the South Carolina Department of Employment and Workforce. I'm the Director of Governmental Affairs here at the agency, and we have had such a great time working with Rick and the association, especially through the Be Pro, Be Proud initiative that I'm sure you all are probably all aware of. Myself and Director Elsie got to attend one of your board meetings a few months ago, so enjoy working with the association and its membership. Unfortunately, we have to talk about COVID-19 today and not Be Pro, Be Proud, but looking forward to this life getting back to normal pretty soon so we can focus on that. So just wanted to thank you all for the opportunity to talk with you today. We'll kind of give an overview of some of the things that have been going on and maybe some of the big frequently asked questions, and then I guess open it up to you all for a dialogue if that works technologically. But in the room, again, I'm Mark Hendrick. We've got Brent Phillips, who's the Director of Unemployment Insurance Operations. We've got Jessica Parker, who's the Unemployment Insurance Exceptions Manager, and Laretha Santiago, who's the Unemployment Insurance Reemployment Coordinator. So lots of words and lots of syllables, but very smart people. So just to go through, and then Townsend Kraut, who's our technical guru today that's helping keep us on track. So just some very high-level things that the agency has done since the COVID, and a lot of this under the leadership of our governor and executive orders. As you can imagine, we've got a huge influx of calls and claims coming in off the charts. We sent a press release out yesterday, but we had 31,000 some claims last week. And so a lot of the hospitality and tourism industry was probably the majority of that. A lot in Horry and Charleston counties, as you might imagine, but certainly all over the state, and all industries in fact were affected, and probably some of your folks as well. But we've been shifting staff around from different places. You know, our customer service delivery model has changed from where, you know, normally we've got folks that are in the SC work centers around the county that interact with the public. Now, because of this, they can't do that. So we're shifting people around, cross-training, trying to get innovative to get people on our telephones. To file for claims, that is all done online, and we wish that 100% of people would go online and do that. But as you can probably imagine, a lot of these people have never filed for unemployment in their life. A lot of them probably don't even know how it works. So the first instinct, you know, when they get laid off is to pick up the phone and call and want to talk to somebody. And that's, you know, while we want to be there to answer questions, just with the sheer volume, it's impossible to talk to every person. So we're trying to do what we can to really push people to the online presence. And the website is dew.sc.gov, and you'll see a banner at the top that's the COVID-19. It's in big letters. That's got all the resources there. So anyway, moving around to try to address that volume of calls. We have eliminated the waiting week that an employee, a waiting week so that an employee can get paid for the first week of employment, essentially a week quicker. Now, don't take that to understand that it goes from instant to 8 days. That's a misconception. That's not how it works. But there is a waiting week that was under current law that folks would have had to been unemployed. But the governor issued an executive order to cut that down and hopefully get folks paid quicker. We waived the requirements to do the 2 weekly online job searches that are required for benefits. Of course, we don't want people getting on a public bus and going to a public computer lab or trying to find a library that's open to do work searches if they don't have internet. And so we have the flexibility under the current regulation for good calls, and we, of course, have interpreted this as good calls. So that requirement is no longer in place, and so that's been addressed. We've also waived the penalty, and you all on the phone will be happy to know this if you don't already. We've waived the charges that would go against an employer if someone files a claim against their business. We're not going to charge you for someone being out of work because of a COVID-19 event or a closure. We've extended the deadline for employers to pay your first quarterly payments. The deadline was April 30th, and it's now June the 1st. However, I do want to note that it's important that you still must submit your quarterly wage report by April 30th, but just the payment is extended a little longer. We are one of the big things that we're trying to do with employers, and Jessica, who's in the room here, can speak to that a little longer, is our employer filed claims process. That's, under normal circumstances, if an individual files a claim, it has to be adjudicated, and we have to reach out to the business to confirm, and the business has up to 10 days to respond, and it's a little bit, there's several pieces to the process, versus if we do the employer filed claims route. Essentially, you as the employer would upload a whole list of, if you've got a mass layoff or a lot of people that are out, and you would send that in, and that would really streamline the process. And so we've seen a huge jump in that being utilized. And then the next thing that we're trying to do, I know it's kind of ironic, but there are some businesses that are upscaling and hiring, especially in the logistics and grocery stores, distribution centers for essential supplies. So if you all are looking to hire folks, obviously if they need a CDL to do the job and don't have one, that's not going to happen overnight. But if there's any kind of workforce need that you all need to address this huge demand of moving essential supplies during the disaster, please let us know, and we'd be happy to post a link on the site. We've got some of the retailers that are hiring. We've got that posted. And then the last thing I will mention before I kind of turn it back over to you all is the COVID-19 Resource Hub, and that's what I keep referencing on the website. A lot of frequently asked questions about the process, and like I said earlier, we get tons and tons of calls and inquiries, and usually about 95% of them have already been answered or in print on this website. And so hopefully this will answer some of the frequently asked questions and free up some of the phone lines. So I think those are the big highlights of where we are. It's ever changing. There's some federal legislation that's I know they're voting this morning. I hadn't checked the news this morning, but the U.S. House of Representatives will be voting on the stimulus, COVID #3 bill. And so there's a lot of extended benefits for unemployment insurance. There's something there called pandemic unemployment assistance, which we're still going to be waiting for guidance from the Department of Labor on some specifics on how to implement it. But essentially that could extend unemployment to folks that wouldn't normally qualify. So folks like 1099 or contractors or nonprofits, church staff, et cetera. And so a lot of talks and a lot of things will be changing, but that's it in a nutshell, the big things. And so we just want to find out kind of what some of your questions, concerns, issues, suggestions. We don't profess to have all the answers. We certainly value the importance of hearing from the private sector, the business community, and you all are such an important industry here in our state that keep us moving and keep us supplied and stuff moving. So we want to hear from you and see how we can help. So with that, I'll pass it back over to you guys.
This is Taryn. As a reminder, any of you that are on the phone, please use your Q&A submission button so that we can do that, or raise your hand so that I can unmute your line. Mark and Townsend, it's gang. Is there anything that you want us to highlight on the website and expand on so that they know what to look at?
Hey, this is Brent with the Department of Employment and Workforce, and once again, like Mark said, we do appreciate the opportunity to try to answer any questions that you may have. One thing we'll do is we'll show you on the website. I have Jessica Reed here with me, who handles the employer file claims process, and I think she can just kind of real quick just where to start if you do choose to file on behalf of your employees. So if Mark mentioned the website is dew.sc.gov, and from there on the home page, if you click on that COVID-19 hub that's there, and if you just scroll down a little bit on the page, keep on going, employer, and where it says employer/business, it's a white box. You click on the employer, and there's more information there, and you can just continue to scroll down. That's general information. Keep on going. And then go up just a little bit for me, right there. And you see where it says employer file claims there in the middle, where it's to protect your employees and help reduce UI fraud. The process for employer file claims, there's a link to learn more. And then the tutorial is right there. So just general information about clicking for the employer file claims process is right there on the website.
Okay, we do have 2 questions right this second, ladies and gentlemen. 3. I'm going to open these up so that we're a little larger real quick. If an employee has not been paid in enough quarters, will he or she be able to still draw unemployment?
I think the question was if an employee, can you repeat that one more time for us?
If an employee has not paid in enough quarters, will he or she still be able to draw unemployment?
As of right now, we're in general just standard unemployment. If an employee is not monetarily eligible for benefits, nothing has changed due to the current circumstances. However, to Mark's point, with pending legislation, we're not really sure what may come out of there at this time. But for those individuals who have filed a claim right now and they are not monetarily eligible, nothing changes at this point.
Okay. Would you encourage them to get involved?
But like always, the thing that we always say and tell people is always file a claim. You know, there's nothing wrong with filing a claim. We'll process it. We'll send you the information, what you could be potentially eligible for. So at any time, there's really no reason to think about a file a claim. Let us process it, and then we can determine someone's eligibility.
Right. If an employer cannot pay employees for pay earned, how can they collect this money owed?
What you mean by that? Are you meaning if the employer cannot pay their employees for their pay, they can't make payroll?
Let me go back to them and ask. What are the current percentages of an employee's current wages that are being paid through unemployment, or where can that information be found?
So I think, and this is Mark, and I'm not the tax expert, but the maximum weekly benefit amount that a person could earn is $326 right now under current law. The average is probably more like $300 per week. Now, with the federal law that's probably going to pass, that could extend it to an additional $600 a week. So ultimately, you could have someone drawing $926 a week. But as far as their current weekly benefit amount, that's all calculated off of a formula at obviously how much wages you've earned and in what wage period. So I guess in answer to your question, if someone's getting paid a certain wage and they do go on unemployment, whatever their weekly earnings are, right now it won't be any higher than $326, but it could potentially bump up to $926.
Can you please waive the only being able to sign up employees 6 times online? There's something in your system, you can only sign them for 6 at a time, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's one of the things that we have discussed as an agency. As Mark mentioned, we have waived the work searches and the waiting week up until the period of the middle of April. That is one thing that's come up as well, is about employers who may need an extension on those. And at this time, it's the individual concern. If an employer does think that this could go past those 6 weeks, we would speak with that employer individually, but that we haven't blanketed that as an agency. And if that need arises, we'll definitely look at it the way we have with the work searches and other things as well. But for now, it still is the 6 weeks. But if you're the employer and you have a concern about that, or you're already up against that 6 weeks, we ask that you just reach out to us. And if someone is on the line now and they want us to speak to them, we can take the contact information and call them after the call.
Okay. I'm sending all of these answers.
I want to just elaborate on that. There are some conversations about that 6 week. This is certainly a politically, not just this, but I just want to kind of paint the picture for you all. So we've got an unemployment insurance trust fund that's, 2 months ago with the great economy, 2.4% unemployment, had a little over $1 billion. And that trust fund, businesses like you all pay into it, and we project out, we have to have enough so we can pay out in a recession. And so we had, like I said, $1.1 billion in that. And so we've got economists running models and projecting. And so while we want to get people paid as quickly as they can, because we know individuals are hurting and, in financial distress. And so we're trying to do as much as we can to get these folks the spending power that they have to buy groceries and keep their utilities paid and stuff like that. But we also do, on the flip side, have to monitor, depending upon what internal regulations, policies, et cetera, are changed. That's certainly going to spike and increase in payments and deplete the trust fund, which ultimately businesses are going to have to, on the back end, through your tax and quarterly filings, to build back up. So all that to say, it's a very fine line and a balance that we're trying to maintain when we make these decisions, and don't make them lightly. But waiving that 6 week requirement is something that we're certainly talking about internally, and you all would probably hear something about that before 6 weeks from now comes. So.
Okay. Next question. If we have to reduce work hours due to the slowdown in business, is there a minimum number of hours that we need to have an employee work per week to still be considered a full-time employee?
No, they can have 0 hours worked.
And still be considered full-time?
Still be considered one of your employees, yes, ma'am, for temporary unemployment.
Hey, Mark, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
this is Paul Familari. I'm Deputy General Counsel for the agency. I think the question was, is there a minimum number of hours that somebody can work and still be considered full-time under our law? The importance of that question is that if somebody is a full-time employee, they are not considered unemployed in our law and would not be therefore eligible to receive unemployment insurance benefits. And our law defines full-time as more than 29 hours per week. So 29 hours or less would be considered part-time, where the individual may potentially be eligible to receive partial unemployment benefits depending on the wages that they earn. But anything over 29 hours would be full-time work, and the person would not be eligible.
Thank you.
And folks, that was, I didn't introduce. Sorry, that was Paul Familari, who's with our agency. I didn't introduce him earlier, but he's works in our legal department. He's our Deputy General Counsel, so he's been all hands on deck, kind of helping us track what's going on in Washington, which is, like I said, probably still changing as we speak.
Next question. Are unemployment rates still at the same level, and any feedback on the rumors that it will be set to 100% of pay? If so, how does this affect companies that don't close but employees choose to not work?
So I think the question is referring to some of the proposals in the current federal legislation that's being debated by the United States House of Representatives. As Mark mentioned at the beginning of the call, there is a provision where the federal government will provide $600 per week on top of whatever an unemployed individual would receive in their regular state UI benefits. So for some people, that might, their state UI benefits plus the $600 on top might equal their regular pay. For others, it might be less. For some, it actually might be more. That's just the reality of that calculation. In terms of eligibility for people who refuse to work, the key is that the person still has to be eligible to receive benefits. And generally speaking, if an employer is still operating, still has available hours, and an employee is refusing to work, generally they're not going to be eligible for unemployment insurance benefits unless they're able to show that there was some good cause for refusing to work, and that's a pretty high standard. And that's just a general response to that particular concern.
So in short, if the company's still open and they technically can work, they would then not be eligible to receive benefits.
As a general rule, there are always going to be case-by-case exceptions to that. Our law does have a provision for something called compelling family circumstances, where it would hold someone eligible or essentially determine somebody had good cause for quitting if they could show that it was medically necessary for them to stop working or change occupations. But even if they're able to show that, they still have to show that they're able and available to work under our law. And if you're not medically able to work, or there's something that's keeping you from the labor force, generally speaking, even if you're eligible on your job separation, you still would not be eligible on a weekly basis until you resolved whatever that issue was.
So the question, and I think somebody just wants clarification, is there a new max? And I think we've established that the weekly max in South Carolina is $326, and what the federal could add a potential $600 a week to that to make it a potential weekly max in South Carolina at $926 a week.
That's correct. That's under the current, yes, that's correct. Under the current proposal, the $600 would be 100% funded by the federal government, and that would not go against our state UI trust fund or would not be charged to any South Carolina employer's account.
Okay. Next question goes back to the other question saying, if the employer cannot make payroll or has not, what can the employee do to collect the money owed?
Okay, so that's a wage and hour question, and that would be something that our LLR department would handle, the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulations. They have authority in this state over wage and hour issues. So that's not a question that the Department of Employment and Workforce can answer. For those employees, they would just need to reach out to LLR to determine what they can do.
Is there a specific person or department within there that they need to talk to?
I would say the wage and hour division. I don't know who the particular contact with LLR is, but their wage and hour division handles those issues.
Paul, they've actually got, because we get a lot of constituent questions related to that, and LLR actually has, on their wage and hour division site, has got you submit like an online claim, you submit it and then it goes to whomever, so it's not a specific, but you can go in there and type in whatever the issue is, and then they adjudicate from their end and reach back out. So I've had people that have gone through that process and told me that that's how the flow is.
Perfect. Thank you, Mark.
Next question. On the WIS website, where it is talking about legislation providing the one-time payment, it also states unemployment insurance would be made far more generous with the $600 per week tacked onto regular state jobless payments through the end of July, which is correct. I think they're asking time check that's being the
So the Senate bill that's, so the federal legislation contains so many different aid provisions, some that relate to unemployment insurance and others that don't. So in one section of the bill, they are talking about the possibility of making one-time direct payments to basically everyone in the country with a certain income threshold. I think it's up to $75,000 for an individual, and anything above that, it gets reduced. That is something that is separate from the unemployment insurance additional federal money. So it's possible that you would have an individual who will get the one-time payments. I think it's $1,200 for the individual. And then if they're drawing unemployment insurance benefits, they would also get that $600 from the federal government per week. So they would both be true.
I'm finishing that up. All right. Next question. What is the turnaround time after the employee files? Is the employer notified to confirm so that the employee can begin receiving benefits?
When an employee files a claim, we send a request for separation information the same day, whether that be by paper or online, depending on your preferred method of contact through our agency. And then you have 10 days to respond to that. So the claim would be handled as soon as we get that, and it goes in line in order of the claims that we receive. So the quicker you send that to us, the quicker the issue can be resolved. But the issue should be resolved as long as it's a layoff within about 14 days.
And I'll add probably the key that we try to remind employers in the business community is just to respond timely, because like we said earlier, the businesses have 10 days. So if you've got somebody that's really needs this this income source and needs it quick, if you wait 10 days before you respond, that's just going to slow things down for them. So we just encourage that to the extent you can.
So once you get the response back from the employer, it takes approximately 2 weeks?
No.
So, sorry. Once we get the employer reply back, depending on how fast that employer responds to us, we can go ahead and remove the issue off that claim. Now, if it's the claimant's first week of filing, let's say they file their claim on Monday and the employer responds to us by Wednesday, technically that employee still cannot certify their claim until the upcoming Sunday. So there are some days in there that they're going to have to wait, because you cannot certify a week until a week is actually open. There is a change with the waiting week, so that payment would be able to release once that update is made into our system. So there are some other things that need to be taken into consideration. So I don't want anyone to assume that as soon as we get the reply back, if it comes back very quickly, that a payment is released the next day. That is not how it works. And then once they do certify, if they're eligible for for benefits, there still is a 24 to 48 hour period from when we release the funds. We release it directly to the bank, and then the bank releases it to the claimant.
If you guys go to the,
kind of it's realized.
if you go to the do.sc.gov, the COVID hub that I mentioned, and you click on the box that says employer, and then the employer filed claims, and there's a how does it work, and you click that. If you scroll down, there's actually a sample calendar that shows if you file this day, here's a likely scenario versus individual's likely scenario. So I know with all the weeks and the waiting weeks and the no waiting weeks and the certify, it can get kind of confusing, but that may be helpful to look at that sample calendar.
Where exactly is that
You
on
go
the
to
employer's page?
Yep, the employer, the box that says employer or businesses, and then in the middle, where it says employer filed claims, and then it says, please take advantage, click here to see the process. And then on the second page, down to the bottom is a calendar. I think hopefully that answers that question, but I think that'll kind of help visualize.
Okay, let me go back to the home page so that they can see this, because I was under the employer information page, if you don't mind.
Can you go back to the home page?
The COVID page.
Right.
Yes. And then scroll down to the white box that says employer/business.
For this screen to change. Hold on, for some reason. All right, employer/business.
All right,
Correct.
and then click where it says employer filed claims. Click here for the process.
There we go. And there's the sample calendar.
And then on the page 2 of that colorful document is a calendar with some scenarios.
All right, and we did put that in our communications, and we'll send that back out to everyone today. Okay. Back to the questions. We are maxed out on some employees already due to the rain from November to now. And actually, this person just needs you to contact them. So I will have her information sent to you shortly. Can you explain the Families First COVID Response Act regarding paid leave on the employer's part?
Okay, I can provide a general overview. The Families First Act has 2 provisions that impact employers with relation to paid leave. The first is a paid sick leave requirement that would allow up to 80 hours of paid sick leave for people who are either sick themselves, quarantined, or caring for a family member. There's a whole host of eligible criteria, and they would be entitled to 80 hours at their full pay if it involves themselves, and 2/3 of their pay if it's relating to caring for a family member, and that would include childcare because the schools are closed. In addition to that, there is emergency paid family medical leave, which would allow up to 10 weeks of 2/3 pay for people who are caring for 18 years or younger children whose school or daycare has closed. And so those are the 2 provisions dealing with some sort of paid leave for COVID-related reasons.
What is the percentage to factor for how much to be paid to employee? I know you were saying it maxes out at $326. Do you have a percentage that you use?
There's an algorithm within the state, within the statute. I think that, and someone else on the call maybe correct me if I'm wrong on this, I think the rough back of the envelope is, generally speaking, if you, over the last year and a half, made, I think it's $30,000 or $35,000 a year, you're going to probably end up with the max. I think that's the rough back of the envelope. But there is somewhere buried in our code a specific algorithm to determine that.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Next question. Regarding the pending legislation, if the bill is passed and the additional $600 is added, would the $926 total be paid to an employee, or would it be capped at the employee's current weekly wages? In other words, would an employee potentially make more on unemployment?
So currently in the draft bill, there is no cap. So it is possible that somebody could draw more in unemployment insurance benefits than what their weekly salary would be. That is a possibility as the bill is currently drafted.
And I'll add, this is Mark, I will add that issue was brought up in the United States Senate, and I think 3 senators, Senator Sass, Scott, and Graham, raised that concern. So both of our United States senators raised that concern that, technically somebody could make more. I think the sweet spot is somewhere around $48,500 annually. If you make less than that, you could potentially make more on unemployment than working. And so I understand that's certainly a sensitive political issue that they're have been debating, and those concerns have been raised. But I kind of understand where your thinking is.
Now, I will add to that, and this is just a variable to consider, is that if you are unemployed, generally speaking, that means that you're not job attached, so you wouldn't be getting health insurance, for instance, covered through your employer. So it's not a straight trade-off in just terms of comparing wages, but as Mark said, that is a very sensitive issue that a lot of us are concerned about, and it has been raised.
All right, are you guys adding to add staff to help field calls? Because the number is busy and stays busy. I pressed another number button on the line, and it referred me to an 866 number, and it says that number is no longer available.
Yes, I'll speak to that. We have utilized as many agency resources, and we're continuing to add and pull from other departments to assist. I think as Mark spoke about to start with, to see a 1,600% increase in claims is the numbers are staggering, and we're aligning resources as quickly as we can. We know there may be issues with getting through on the phones, so we are working through other avenues as far as trying to put as much information on the website and other resources to free up the phone lines as quickly as we can, because we know it is frustrating to potentially not be able to get through right away. We do work those calls as quickly as we can, and to that point, we are looking at every resource possible to assist us on the phone, to provide general information for those who need it, and looking at other avenues as well that we may have direct contact and provide more resources to individuals. So it's something that we are working on all the time, is trying to find as many resources as possible. And I think once individuals are able to file their claim and process their claim, the process is really set up to be very self-service, very limited interaction needed. But we do know there are those individuals who may be having issues. And just speak from a bigger level, this is a national thing as well, and not just specific to South Carolina. So a lot of our processes have to go through certain things that are impacted on a national level too, that could, slow us down a little bit as far as the claims filing, but we're pushing through those as quickly as we can and getting as many claims processed. So we'll continue to look for ways to provide additional resources. But, like we mentioned earlier, if someone has a specific incident, you can provide that information to us. We'll reach out to you.
And I'll speak just to Brent's team and the strategic focus and the great job they've done responding. If you look back historically, during the Great Recession, it was very gradual. You kind of saw the slope, and you saw it, and over the course of months and even years, it just dipped and dipped and dipped, and we staffed up over the course of that time. Versus where we find ourselves now, a month ago, even 3-4 weeks ago, we had the lowest unemployment rate in the history of our state. We had more people working than ever. Good times, less staff, everything was modernized, and then essentially in a matter of a couple of weeks and a few, mandatory closings, we got all that basically overnight. And so that's some of the challenges, how rapidly these are coming, and then not to mention the influx, but just the logistical issue of, we're sitting around a table, but we're all pretty far apart. But think about the call centers and the work that has to be done when you've got people that have childcare issues, a lot of the same issues you all are facing as well. So we're trying to get innovative and address it the best we can, but it will probably continue to be a pretty heavy load. So that's why we would just encourage folks to try to utilize the web presence as much as possible in the meantime. Are there any suggestions, you all? I know we've been asking questions, but we're certainly open if you guys have thoughts or suggestions or anything that you think that we could do as a state agency to serve your industry better. And certainly Rick, Rick keeps in contact with me and doesn't hesitate to share those periodically. But if there's anything specific that you think that we could do to help you, we're certainly open to hearing.
We still have a few more questions to go through, and Rick sends his regards. He's sitting in here listening, but he's not chiming in because he doesn't feel like he needs to, because y'all are doing such a great job answering all of these questions.
I was worried if that was a good or a bad thing.
Next question. No, that was a compliment. Did the employees have to certify after we sign them up?
They do. That is part of the process.
10 days, 5?
They do. So part of the certification, once the employer files a claim on their behalf, we still require the employee to certify the claim. For the simple reason is a lot of times employers may not know that employee has a part-time job or a different job and has additional wages that they need to report as well. So that is why we do ask the employee to certify each week. It's a pretty simple process. It's 2 questions that they do have to certify for us. So yes, you do file the claim on their behalf, but they still have to certify their own week to receive payment.
And we do ask that your employees give at least 24 hours from the time that you submit the file before they actually attempt that certification.
You want them to provide at least 24 hours after they've established the claim before sending the certification?
We ask that your employees wait 24 hours at least after you've submitted your file, like your employer file claim, before they log into their portal and try to complete that certification. Because it does have to run through a batch job process in our system that does take overnight. Make sure I wrote that right. All right, are nonprofits and church, and like, for instance, church employees treated the same way, and are they eligible just like any other employee?
So that's a question that's going to depend on the nature of the employer. So church employees generally are exempt employees, so they're not covered by the unemployment insurance tax laws. So the general rule of thumb is if you're not paying UI taxes on those employees, they're not going to be eligible for regular state unemployment insurance. If a program such as the federal program that Mark mentioned at the beginning is passed, there may be some availability for those otherwise exempt employees. Nonprofit employees, as long as the nonprofit has more than 4 employees, they're covered and they should have been paying, and then they may be eligible. And in that instance, the nonprofit is likely to be not paying taxes, but only paying dollar for dollar of what those individuals draw on unemployment insurance benefits. And so that's how that would run. If a nonprofit employee is eligible for benefits, the reimbursing employer will then subsequently have to pay dollar for dollar of what those benefits are. I will note that for those employers, the federal bill that's under debate in the House now does include a provision that the federal government would reimburse reimbursable employers 50% of the benefits that were paid out as a result of the COVID situation.
If you haven't received the paperwork as an employer to verify employment, someone filed as the employer for 2 employees. One went through and said pending. The other said the start date was after the last day worked, which wasn't the case. As I tried to, I believe this one you're just going to have to contact directly. Is the state going to set up a chat line where we can do a chat session with state employees, because that may be more efficient than a call-in?
Yeah, to Mark's point too, that is something we've looked at between chat or email or different ways that people could. It is important to know, I think our resources are limited as well from where we are. Is once we put people on chat, it may take someone away from the phones to help other people. But no, it is something that we have thought through to try to reach as many groups as possible the quickest way. I know sometimes doing phone calls is helping one person, but if you look at other avenues, whether it's video conferencing, WebEx, chats, you can serve multiple people quicker. So it is something that we are looking at with these surging claims to come up with different ways. Not there yet, but we're always looking for different avenues to reach as many people as possible.
And to Brent's point, the claims that we do, it's, if I just need to take a laptop home and send emails and use my cell phone, that's easy. But because of the nature of what they're doing and the cybersecurity piece and social security numbers and privately unidentifiable information and VPNs and all those firewalls, that's something that can't be as easily done from home. And so we certainly have to take the cybersecurity piece into consideration, and that's how our hubs that are set up around the state to process these claims and the call centers all have those measures in place. That it takes a little bit longer to implement remotely due to the virus.
Okay. Can an email address be set up for employer questions?
So yes, we're actually actively working on that. Hopefully we'll be able to get that information out today, but it's just going to be for employer filed claims questions only. So that is up and coming. Once that is updated, if you guys will continually refer back to our website, that information will be there. I know Mark has your contact information, so as soon as we know that it's up and working, he can send that information out to you to disperse to others as well.
Happy to help communicate that. The last question on the list that I see is, what if an employer does not receive the verification paperwork within the 10 days provided to respond?
So I think the question was, if the employer did not receive their paperwork for someone to respond to?
Right,
if
if
that
they
was
do not receive verification paperwork.
Sure. So
yes.
These being a lack of work claims where the claimant was laid off, let's just say someone doesn't receive the paperwork, fails to respond, we're set up where that issue does resolve, so it doesn't slow down payment for the individual, for the employer, or for the employee. So even if an employer chooses not to respond, didn't get the mailing, for whatever reason, it's not going to slow down the payment to the claimant, so it doesn't impact their benefits.
So I just want to follow that up with, but it is important that they're actually looking and tracking these, because if you have employees who have quit or you have fired and they go through and potentially file a claim with a lack of work and you do not respond, That is all that we know from an agency perspective, is that they were laid off. So you please respond back with those notices stating if they were fired or if they quit or if there's some underlying issue that we need to know about so that we can address those, and those claims potentially may be found ineligible for benefits.
I think Laritha's point is valid, and especially with the amount of claims coming through, but the integrity piece from the agency is still something that we monitor. We don't just stop because of the influx of claims. So to our point, what we have seen, in the past is whenever there's a large number of filings, you do have some of your former employees trying to come back through and say they were laid off, even though you may have fired them months ago. So it is important that any communication that we send to you that you do read and respond to, especially for those were not laid off.
All right, are there any other comments or questions?
I think we're good on our end. We just, again, appreciate the opportunity to share with you, and certainly feel free to reach out and let us know, Rick, if you've got some, issues that aren't onesie-twosies, but big kind of across the board macro type issues that we need to address with leadership. Just let me know, and I'll certainly bring those up.
Mark, this is Rick, and so I just want to thank you. I know y'all are covered up, and for you to be willing to assemble this team for this call at this time, we just really appreciate that. Hopefully we've saved you guys some extra work by bringing this group, these questions together. We are committed to sending out everything you want us to send out, so you just let us know, and thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
All right. We're going to close it out. We did have a lot of Q&A, and we'll publicize that as well. And we will be saving this recording and making it available, et cetera.
And if you get more questions
Thank you guys
that you want to copy and paste and send, we'll try to get them answered and sent back to you. If you want to compile them all
Sure.
and send them to
Thank you, Mark. And we have a few that I'm going to have you send over. I'm going to send their contact information to you directly.
Sure.
That needs assistance.